Hi, I'm Georgette, and welcome to the Medical Mama Podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to title The Invitation, and we're going to talk about some things that I've already alluded to in prior episodes, episode 1 and 2, as it relates to just stepping into this life. And the invitation keeps coming up for me as a really great analogy to think about what this road can look like. And I think about it in a way that, so you are listening to this podcast because we potentially have very similar looking invitations, or somebody that you love has an invitation that has similar details to mine. But the reality is that each of us have our own invitation with its own beautiful details, an own aesthetic and look and feel to it that we receive in this life, whether we acknowledge the invitation, whether we take the time to really read the details of it, to appreciate the beauty of it, no matter what the contents are, is our choice. And that's a really lovely thing. And I would imagine that part of your invitation and part of mine says something like, welcome to the most transformative experience of your life. And that can come with a lot of big feelings, right? Transformation is a powerful invitation in a lot of ways. And we get to choose it or not. And we can step into maybe even some of our biggest life purposes because of this invitation. So today's episode is going to be focused on you and your relationship with stepping into medical parenthood, medical motherhood, medical fatherhood. I actually just came back from a business trip where I got to meet so many incredible people and actually had a lot of conversations around medical parenting, special needs parenting, however you want to call it. We got to talk about it and we got to share our experiences, and I got to hear from actually two fathers and some moms as well, who they're further down the road than I am. And it was so encouraging and really beautiful to hear their stories and the details of their stories, and how we do have so many similarities on the road that we're all traveling on, even though the details look different. So I want to help you maybe put some words to your invitation, because it does help to talk about it and to name things so that we can process it appropriately and navigate it together. So there are some very big feelings that come with stepping into medical parenthood. I know in the last episode, I encouraged you to go down this path, to walk this journey, to step into it, to lean into it, because it is such a powerful path to walk. There are some people that walk it because their children by birth have uh, medical complexities or different presentations in life. And then there are other people that choose to walk down this path because somebody that they loved or love has a child with medical complexities, or they even choose to adopt a child that has medical complexities. And that's also really beautiful to witness, that we can all receive this invitation in so many ways. And just like anything unexpected that happens in our life, big feelings come with it. We're emotional beings. And especially with the age of technology and how we are continuing to expand as a human race, powered by new technology, it's even that much more important for us to recognize and understand and define what makes us truly human, and what are those beautiful things that can't be replicated, um, and are just a part of being human. And emotions and feelings are part of that. one of the biggest feelings that I'm going to name that comes with this is grief. And grief in itself can be so transformative. And it doesn't have to be, um, and it doesn't have to be as heavy as it feels in when it's first introduced in the way that it enters your life, whatever that looks like. I've heard an analogy about grief that I'm going to share with you, and I think is a really beautiful mental image to think about. And that is that if you imagine your life like a box, so imagine any size box, and that there is a ball that's placed in the box. The, that ball that's placed in the box is grief. And there are going to be some days that the ball expands and is so big. It pushes on every corner of the inside of the box and it feels heavy and it just feels like, oh my goodness, the box is going to burst. It cannot carry this ball in the box. There are going to be moments that it feels like that. And then there are going to be other moments where, because this ball is ever expanding and shrinking and transforming shapes, where it feels so small that you don't even notice it's there, but it's there. And it's never going to leave the box. And it's always going to be something that you carry with you. And I thought that that was a really beautiful analogy. So as I share it with you, I hope it's helpful for you too. And grief isn't the only thing that'll come with it, with this road, but it's one of the biggest feelings. And so that's why I highlighted that just for you to think about today. Um, Love can continue to be a big feeling and a big motivation that comes with this road as well. Um, Ambition, grit, fear, anger, immense joy, gratitude, happiness, all of these things. I mean, there are so many feelings that come with it. But I just wanted to highlight that first one as a really important one that you have to process through in order to travel this invitation and go on this journey really well. And I'm going to validate that some of the grief is real, and some of the fear that initially comes or even comes later is very real, because especially when you have a child that has, or a loved one that has a disability, it can be so big. And it's so big and so scary and so overwhelming, because the reality is, while we have come so far in our society on accepting and integrating people who have all kinds of disabilities into daily life, the reality is that we still have so far to go, and that it it still isn't typical to see accommodations be made and spaces be created that allows for people with all kinds of levels of abilities to take part in day-to-day society. I still had a very dear friend of mine who I was talking to. She has a daughter that is absolutely gorgeous and actually a few months older than Benjamin. And she had shared with me, she said, oh my goodness, my daughter hasn't been exposed to people with disabilities as much as I want her to. And so we had a great conversation around that. And it just made me think that while I am living in a world that really is immersed in finding and creating and advocating for spaces that are inclusive of all kinds of human presentations of how people show up in the world, there are people that still don't experience it yet, and it is part of our invitation to help create those spaces. And that can feel empowering, but it can also feel scary. So just step into it, find your community, find your people, even if they're people that you haven't met yet. Put yourself out there and lean into all of the opportunities that exist if you live in the US And even in other countries, there are really great opportunities too. But I am US based. In the United States, we have some really wonderful programs, really wonderful organizations, and people that advocate for individuals with disabilities to be included even more in day to day life. Another reason why it feels so big, this uh, a diagnosis event, a birth event, an accident event later, however disability showed up for you or shows up for you in life, it feels so big because it impacts every relationship in your ecosystem. Your personal relationships, your family relationships, your friendships, your work relationships, everything is going to be touched by this and impacted by it uh, in ways that you may not understand until maybe years down the road, because everybody processes things at their own pace. And so you have to just be open to walking the path and understanding that everybody has an impact. I'm going to say something that may strike a chord and may be a little controversial, but I hope you know that I'm saying it from a place of true love and understanding that one of the biggest loves of my life shows up this way. There is part of the invitation that we get to read in understanding that our loved ones show up as the least of these in our humanity. Faith is a big thing in my life. My interaction and relationship with my faith has shaped a lot of ways, everything in my life. It's been very transformative in every part of my life. And uh, I am Christian by faith. And so I think about when Jesus came to, for the least of these, and what that means. I think, oh, he also means He also means every expression of humanity. That humanity, the ones that humanity can look at and say, oh, they're not going to bring great value. They are not going to be the greatest among us. But the reality is that no, even the least of these will be the greatest, and they can be the greatest teachers and truly show us the deepest lessons about ourselves, not just as physical beings, but as spiritual beings. So I hope you accept and hear that as a blessing that I intend it to be. And then, even though with all those big feelings, you still have to keep showing up. You still have to keep doing day to day things. You still have to learn to move and transform and perform day to day tasks that you did before you got the invitation, and learn how to do them still even after you've received the invitation and processed it. You have to keep moving and showing up. And the most beautiful things happen when you keep moving and showing up. As hard as it may seem, as hard as it can feel in the moment, keep doing it. It's a worthy transformation and invitation. And you will have life and life in the full when you keep showing up. I want to implore you to notice signs in yourself um, and others that may change as you do process your invitation and the big feelings that come. And notice that different signs can show up in different moments of your life. I didn't realize it fully at the time, but I do remember that when I was in the NICU, there was actually a clinical psychologist who was coming in and out and doing research on NICU parents and the way that they would attach to the children that were in the NICU. And I thought it was fascinating. I remember in the moment answering these questions every day and having the nurse do this little survey on how I was responding to my baby, asking me questions about how I was feeling and all of these things. And it didn't totally click at the time, but I smile thinking about it now, thinking, oh my goodness, being a NICU parent, I joined a category of a special population, like an at risk, or a population, a group of people that had an experience that are that it's defined in a way that we can study trends about, because it's important to learn patterns so that we can help each other better. So I just thought that that was very interesting to notice when that happened. And so I'm just sharing that with you because I want you to notice that you are, as a special needs parent, you're at risk to developing certain signs and symptoms. And so I don't, whether it's physically, socially, emotionally, I really want to encourage you to ask for help and seek help as needed. If you feel like doing finding a routine and defining what your new normal is can be difficult, and there are going to be different stages in your life where that normal is going to shift and transform as people grow, as maybe new things present, as life will have it, and it'll have its own little twists and turns that you have to navigate through. Know your signs and symptoms of how you're showing up, and ask for help if you need it, and seek help. Find respite support. I don't know if you've heard of that term before, but respite means finding a break, get a moment, and embrace that break if you can. Um, like I said, in the US, there are a lot of different organizations that do exist to try and give support. Actually, um, I'm going to give you, I'm going to share a resource that I hope I'll put it into the description of this episode as well. There's a website called findhelp.org, findhelp.org. And if you're in the United States, you can put in your zip code, and there are lots of different categories for help that you can visit, and you'll be routed to different organizations. So I would encourage you to look at that resource if you do need to find help in any category that exists there. I'm going to share something else that I hope is helpful for you. And check out that website. It's really, really fantastic. I actually use it a lot in my line of work with the work that I do outside the home day to day, which is really great. Something for you to think about, and I want you to prioritize, is regulation. Regulation of yourself, regulation of your physical being, and your emotional being, your spiritual being, all parts of you. Regulation is paramount, because if you are not regulated and don't have that baseline state of being, you're not going to be able to respond to life in in a good way. You may respond over emotionally, or over exaggerated, or be more prone to taking physical actions that may not be constructive for you and those around you. And this is something that I've learned a lot, uh, and over the years, just through professional trainings, but then also in personal experience, that we have to, if we want to see and experience situations in the most holistic way, we have to make sure that we're regulated first. And as humans, we do, that's the point, that's the state that we're always trying to fight for. Heck, that's the homeostasis, if everybody remembers that from your science class. That's the state of balance that even our cells at the cellular level are fighting to get to. So finding a state of regulation to be hopefully your majority constant state is paramount for your total well-being, because from that state is where other things flow. Here are a few truths that I want you to hold to, and then we'll close this episode with a really neat art piece that I have had a mixed relationship with. But more on that in a moment. Some truths for you to hold on to about this invitation and your loved one, whether it's your child or another beautiful human in your life. I want you to hold on to these things, that no matter what expression of humanity they are showing up as. They are still wholly, completely, and deeply human, just a different expression. They still want and deserve the same things that we all want: to be loved, to connect, to explore, to discover the talents and likes and dislikes that we have, to lean into um, growing at their pace and discovering everything that their invitation has on their invitation to on this side of heaven for them to learn. So lean into that. And on that same vein, I don't know if you have faith or not, but like I said, I do. And disability and all the expressions that it has is just part of living on this side of heaven. We weren't promised that this was going to be an easy journey on this side of heaven, but it is a beautiful invitation for us to learn and grow and really experience the totality of how humans can present. And this is a great invitation for that. So I encourage you to lean into that. The principles that were present before, without this situation in your life, are still true today. The principles of you wanting to, if this is your child, in that child relationship, of you wanting to love them and help them be their best selves, that still exists. The principle of being able to grow a connection with a new human, to be curious, to guide them, to be present for them, to protect them, all of those things are still true. The principles stay the same, but the methods will change. Embody that, know that. And I also want to encourage you to value presence over performance and really embrace all of the details that you didn't expect that are present on your invitation. I'm going to close this episode with a poem that you may or may not have been introduced to. I'm surprised sometimes when I meet parents that have never heard of it. Some other parents say, oh, yes, I've heard of it. Yes, this is a poem I know. And everybody has mixed feelings and emotions about it. And the poem is called Welcome to Holland. And it's actually a really common poem that are given to special needs parents because it describes the grief and shock and processing of raising a child with medical complexities. And I have been given this poem 2 times that I can think about. Actually, no, 3 times. I'll share each. I'll share each one. The first time was in the NICU with Benjamin. The second time was when I was in a transition meeting from early steps, which was the 0 to 3-year-old program, into preschool age learning programs. And then the third time was actually after Bane was born. So I have a love, I did not, I have a very interesting journey with this poem. So the first time that I received it, one of the nurses gave it to me in the NICU, and I read it once, and I smiled, and I said, thank you, and I put it away, and I felt angry. I didn't want to read it again because I didn't want to accept, oh, this is going to be a lifelong thing. Like I had shared with you in our diagnosis journey and becoming a medical mama, I wanted so badly to leave that chapter in the past. And I said, oh, that's nice. You know, that's not going to be us. This is not going to be something that is impacting us for the rest of our life. Oh, if I could only go back to that Georgette and give her a hug and encouragement, I would. But anyway, I have grace for her. She did a wonderful job with what she knew in that moment. So that was when I first read the poem. The second time that I read the poem was at that transition meeting, and I honestly do not remember all the details of that meeting because I just sat in the back staring at that poem that was in this folder of flyers and information and everything, and I just cried. I just cried because I realized here's this poem again that I thought I was never going to see, and it's here. And why is it still here? I don't want this. And then the next time I got it was right after Benjamin was born, because I'm very, very lucky, and we were very blessed that some of the nurses that were there when Bane was born, I'm sorry, some of the nurses that were there when Benjamin was born were also there again when our second son, Bane, was born. And no, no NICU stay, no birth event. It was just a typical delivery and almost like redemption for all of us, which was beautiful. And I connected with one of the nurses afterwards, after the birth, and she came to visit me and Bane in our room, and we were talking about how Benjamin was doing in life, and then she gave me that poem again. And this time I was able to read it without the big feelings, and I was able to read it with more mature eyes, more refined eyes, and appreciate it for what it is. And I think that it's really beautiful, any art form that other people create that we can all digest over time, because art has a beautiful way, whether it's through words, through pictures, through sounds, through music. It has a way of connecting us all and touching something almost visceral, just deeply human to our core. So I'm actually going to close this episode with reading the poem in case you haven't heard it, or maybe you haven't seen it in a while. I hope it resonates with you. It's by Emily Pearl Kingsley, and it's called Welcome to Holland. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks, you make wonderful plans. The Colosseum, Michelangelo's David, the gondolas in Venice. You may even learn some handy phrases in Italian, and it's so very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." "Holland?" you say. "What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in flight plan, and they've landed you in Holland, where you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence and famine and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks. You must learn a whole new language, and you will meet a whole new group of people you would have never met. It's just a different place. It's a slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and begin to notice that Holland has windmills and tulips, even Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy. They're bragging about the wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, "Yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned." And the pain of that will never, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't go to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special and very lovely things about Holland. And that's the end of the poem. I hope you can understand why there were a lot of big feelings that came with that poem when I read it every time. And I'm sure there are big ones that come up for you too. Um, this is a beautiful invitation, my friend. Life is a beautiful invitation. yours and mine just has some similar stitching and similar wording to it that we never expected would be there, but it's really beautiful that it is. I would argue it's even more beautiful than what we have planned. I hope you're encouraged today to step into this invitation, and maybe you share this with a friend who also has an unexpected invitation. And even if they don't see it at the time, maybe time, love, actions will encourage them to see the beauty in that invitation as well. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. I can't wait to see you again on the next episode. I'll talk to you soon.